And not surprisingly, over the weekend, Tommy Robinson, political activist and author of Enemy of the State, was tweeting an awful lot about this and retweeting stats and statistics about either terrorist atrocities in the States or elsewhere, or some of the practices in Muslim countries. Good morning, Tommy. Welcome back to Talk Radio.
Good morning.
Let me ask you, do you think Donald Trump's being a bit weaselly by not saying this is about the Muslims in those countries, just saying it's about the countries?
No, I think we should be honest. Those countries are hotbeds for jihadist activity, and jihadists control many territories in those countries. If it was a Muslim ban, when we talk about fake news, it's not a Muslim ban. Okay, if it was a Muslim ban, it would have had Pakistan, Bangladesh, Saudi Arabia. It's not a Muslim ban. It's targeting 7 countries, and this is nothing new. This hysteria that's coming out from politicians, from celebrities. President Bush had enforced 6 temporary bans. Clinton enforced 6 temporary bans. Reagan enforced bans. Obama enforced bans. No one spoke about it. All these people going crazy about this ban, all these liberals, all these politicians. Barack Obama was bombing every single day last year, 5 out of the 7 countries. None of them none of them were protesting. All these people running up to airports with their boards. But Obama was murdering people in those countries. No one protested it. This is just a way to get the Trump administration, and it is okay. And if we take terrorism out of the view, if we take the fact of terrorism, or even why would Donald Trump or be concerned that people would be lying about refugees? If we had a ban on refugees 12 months ago in Europe, 200 people would be alive today. The 5 out of the 8 Paris attackers were refugees. The Berlin lorry driver was a refugee. Okay. Now, President Trump went on an election where he promised to get tough and he promised to protect the American people. That's what he's doing. If he didn't do this, say he didn't do this, and a Somalian come into the country in a month's time and he went on a terrorist attack, everyone would be screaming at him why he didn't do it. So all he's done, and also he's come into an administration that was run by Barack Hussein Obama, who helped the Muslim Brotherhood take over Egypt. The Muslim Brotherhood would probably, thanks to the Trump administration, soon be a prescribed terrorist organisation. So all of these things will play a part into when he comes in, the first thing he has to do is put a halt on everything and get the American house in order.
Okay, now you've mentioned the number of people who were immigrants or refugees into America, but for example, the man who carried out the Florida gay nightclub shooting was born in the USA, and terrorists in this country were homegrown. So he's not going to. So really, you could say this is so much flim-flam. This is smoke and mirrors. It's not going to stop anything.
It's not, because you see the 7 countries, and I know people from those countries have actually committed to acts of terrorism in the United States, but that doesn't mean they're not going to. So people want to scream him down. Proactive. If you just look to Europe, it's okay for Americans, it's okay to ask themselves, what do we get out of this? What do we get out of Somalians, Libyans, Syrians? What do we get out of them coming to our country? What do we gain? Because we haven't seen integration or assimilation in any country in Europe by members of those communities in general. If you look at what you will get...
With respect, we have a Mayor of London, former Labour MP, who's a Muslim. So he assimilated very well indeed. Yeah,
he has. I'm saying in general, we've seen problems. If you look at the cost that the UK faces, we have a charge of £9 billion a year to monitor 4,000 would-be terrorists every single day, 25 days, 7 days a week. That is what Trump is trying to stop. If you look at the other problems that come with it, if you look at the Pakistani community in the UK, 3% of our country is Pakistani. They are responsible for over 33% of the birth defects of the problematic due to their cousin in their cousin marriages. 70% of them marry each other. These are all problems that will be imported into America by allowing these people. If you even go through the views, if you just look at 2 of the countries, Iraq and Afghanistan, the views on stoning from a Pew Research say that 58% of Iraqis believe stoning is good, it's okay.
Yeah, but people change. If they come to this country, there have been no stonings I'm aware of in the UK, and the US is even more different to the UK. It'd be very difficult to think of, older city centres being taken over by Muslim communities.
No, if you read the order where it doesn't mention Muslims, okay, you read the order, it says, in order to protect Americans, the United States must ensure that those admitted to this country do not bear hostile attitudes towards its founding principles. Well, they do, because the support for Sharia in Afghanistan is 99%. In Iraq, it's 91%.
So why hasn't he banned Saudi Arabia? Because, as I said earlier on, 15 of the 19 murderers of 9/11 were Saudis, as was Osama bin Laden, and yet they're not on the list.
I completely agree. And the same with Pakistan, because their views on apostasy, 90% of them don't believe in freedom of religion. They believe they should kill people for believing in Islam. Why hasn't he done it with Saudi Arabia? When I'm looking, I think Trump is cleverer than all of us think he is. He showed that with the whole election. If he needs the support of Saudi Arabia, if he's going to put it on, which is what we need, is a world leader to put it right on Saudi Arabia, that they deal with the refugee crisis. These are Muslim refugees, and they've already come out yesterday saying after a phone call with Donald Trump on Sunday that they'll support a no-fly zone, that they'll back it. So I think he'll need the support of Saudi Arabia in order to enforce what he wants to enforce, which is...
They're the worst inflictors, but they're the worst inflictors of domestic casualties on America as a country. Once again, 75% of the murderers came from Saudi Arabia, but we've got to get into bed with those people, have we?
No, well, the biggest problem we have is the refugee crisis, which over the coming years we're going to see, if Donald Trump wants to wipe out ISIS, we're going to see more attacks in Muslim countries, we're going to see a bigger flow of refugees, and what we need to stop is them flooding through into Europe.
Let me play you something right now, Tommy.
If Saudi Arabia can help that, then that will fundamentally help our problem.
Listen to this then, Tommy. This is Kate Allen, whom we spoke to earlier on. She's a director at Amnesty UK. Here's what she told me.
He's sticking to a pledge which, we would say Amnesty International is under international human rights law is illegal. And I understand that there are legal challenges happening within the US. Simply because you're elected doesn't mean that you can then start violating human rights and get away with that.
Because that way dictatorship lies. What would you say to Kate?
I'd say that she's lying because he's not sticking to the pledge. The pledge was for a Muslim ban. He's not enforced a Muslim ban. It's actually quite weak compared to what he pledged. That's the reality of it. And it's a temporary ban that every politician previous to him has enforced. And the ban is for the safety and security of American citizens, which is his first priority. His first priority. And I'm sorry if a few people are getting upset at airports, which is the reality of all it is. People are getting upset at airports. They don't have a right to enter that country. They don't have a right.
But some of them set off just to change planes in the States, and they've been held up and detained. Now, maybe this was introduced too quickly and not thought out enough.
No, of course. When you on those first week, you can have problems. But all this fake news, which is what it is, when we have politicians in the UK saying, I can't get in, when we have Mo Farah, if you read the actual order, you will get in. It says clearly that the politicians, celebrities, stars, they will get in. So all this fake news coming out, and I'm not being funny, but Mo Farah, when I hear him saying that he's been made to feel like an alien because of Donald Trump, no, Mo, I think as a Somalian, you've been made to feel like an alien because every community that Somalians have come into, if you go 10 miles north of where I'm standing now in Milton Keynes, and you go to the Fishermeat estate, the English people in that estate are scared to leave their homes. Just read up and Google what's going on that estate.
Okay, let me ask you a final question.
Terrorised by Somali immigrants.
Final question, Tommy. We've got the petition online for people saying we should withdraw the invitation for a state visit for Donald Trump. It's approaching 1 million signatures. So there's a huge groundswell of dislike for Trump and everything he stands for as far as the Muslim ban goes. What would you say to those people?
I'd say that's 1% of the UK, 1.5% of the UK. And I think that the mainstream media need to stop boring us on the fact that everyone's against this. The majority of Americans...
1 million people, though, Tommy. 1 million people. 1 million people signed that petition.
1 million people signed that petition. How many people... Was it 60 million people voted for Donald Trump? How many people... 17 million people voted for us to leave the EU? All of these figures, 1 million people is nothing, really. We have 4 million Muslims in the UK.
Tommy, thank you very much. Tommy, got to leave it there, but thank you very much for your time this morning. Tommy Robinson there, political activist and author of Enemy of the State. Very passionate views there from Tommy. You might take exception to them. If so, I want to hear from you. 0344 499 1000. Or similarly, you might support his views. You might say he's actually saying what lots of people feel but are too frightened to say. Either way, I want to hear from you. Let's have all sides of this debate. 0344 499 1000. Do you think Donald Trump's ban on people from Muslim countries, 7 of them, not 7 people, 7 countries, is fair or unfair? Let's get the thoughts now. Let's go to Berkshire and Mohammed. Good morning, Mohammed.
Good morning.
What would you like to comment on first? What Tommy said or Donald Trump's policy?
Well, Mr. Trump, one of the interesting things is, right, for example, there are over 14 Islamic countries that ban anyone entering their countries that has a Jewish, Israeli, passport, but I don't see any outcry on that. And also this a petition that started up against Donald Trump's state visit to the Queen. Now, Arabia, right, the world's worst oppressors of women and human rights, all the time get a state, a visit to the Queen. But I don't see no outcry on that. And this is a stupidity of the far left. And my community, the Islamic community, are quick to play the human a rights card when it happens to them, and yet Christians in the Islamic countries who are abused and human rights are degraded, they don't jump and say, what about these people's right to exist?
In fact, I mentioned earlier on, Mohammed, that 16 Arab nations will not allow people holding Israeli passports, even if they're dual citizens, to go into their countries. But there's not been much outcry about that.
No, exactly. I mean, as a Christian, me, in the UK, as a Christian, right, I turned away from this ideology, and I have to live in hiding. Where is my rights here?
Well, in the UK, Mohammed, in the UK, you have to live in hiding.
Well, absolutely. A friend of mine, a year ago, almost got killed outside his own home in Bradford, and he had to leave his hometown under armed police protection at the end of the day.
Simply for converting to Islam?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So my community needs to get its own house in order before they start telling Donald Trump about what he ought to be doing. Donald Trump has a right to protect the people of his country, and I don't see anything wrong in what he's doing. Absolutely nothing.
Mohammed, we've got to leave it there, but I appreciate your call. A fascinating call there. Okay. And let's get the thoughts of Sanjay in Monmouthshire on this one. Good morning. Oh, sorry, Loughborough. I do apologise, Sanjay. What are your thoughts, Sanjay? Did you hear what Tommy Robinson was saying to us?
Yeah, I did. Hi, Paul. You're right, mate.
Fine, thank you.
Yeah, I wanted to say that. Yeah, I completely agree with Tommy Robinson. You got to understand, if anyone cares about their country, they have to be a patriot for the country to progress. Now, the problem is, you have to put your foot down. If you don't say things, your country is just going to be overtaken. Now, there is a danger of Islam and there's a danger of Muslims. Believe it or not, they want to come into non-Muslim countries to overpopulate, to eventually become majority, to take over and make it an Islamic state.
Isn't that just racist paranoia, though, Sanjay? Or anti-Muslim paranoia?
Well, no, because Islam is not a race, and no one's even thinking about colour of skin. Well, what really upsets me is, I feel sorry for white people sometimes. Donald Trump is white, and the problem is, because he's white, if he was a brown or a black person, people wouldn't be as much outcry. Because he's white, people are saying, oh, he's racist.
Let me make a quick point, Joel, a couple of points about. One is that actually America is a country founded on migration and immigration. Secondly, in about the middle of the last century, the middle of the 19th century, the Americans on the West Coast banned Chinese workers who'd built the railways from staying in the country and sent them away. Now, I regard that as disgraceful. Is there any difference between that expulsion of the Chinese labourers and stopping Muslim migrants or immigrants coming, or even refugees? It's the same thing. It's fundamentally, if not racist, it's picking on somebody simply because of their choice of religion.
Well, back then, they did that because they wanted the jobs for Americans, not for the Chinese.
But that's the same thing you're saying is happening now, that you're using words like swamped, which I don't accept about the Muslims, and that's exactly what the West Coast settlers, the white settlers, said about the Chinese.
The thing is, with Muslims, they're unpredictable because their ideology is so bad. And another thing is, why aren't Saudi Arabia taking any of them? They only have a population of 28 million, and it's the size of India. Come on, man. I mean, India's population is 1.3 with 200 million Muslims. I mean, why don't they take their own, the heart of Islam?
Let me ask you, Sanjay, are you a Hindu?
Yeah, I'm a Hindu, yeah, yeah.
I'm going to say, is this a view that's common amongst your Hindu friends? Because, of course, we know in the past there have been terrible tensions and violence between Hindus and Muslims.
There's been a 1,000-year invasion of Islam in India and killing, yeah. But the thing is, it's common sense. I do have Muslim friends, don't get me wrong, and even some of my friends even agree with me. They just can't say it themselves. Muslims can't condemn anything themselves, because when they do, they're persecuted by Muslims. This is the problem.
Sanjay, thank you very much for that passionate call there. He joined the conversation by dialing 0344 499 1000. Let's go to South Wales now, and Simon. Good morning, Simon. You're on Talk Radio. What have you got for us?
Good morning, Paul. On the thing about the banning on Trump, obviously, in America, I think he's done what everybody else in the world thinks. He's banned, he's just done total ban on leaving people coming in.
Except that, with respect, Simon, he hasn't done what everybody in the world thinks, because almost 1 million people have signed that petition objecting to what he's done and saying he shouldn't be invited on a state visit.
I said that wrong then. It was most people in this country thinks. I mean, we are living in a country in Great Britain. I live in South Wales, but Great Britain, where we've had soldiers killed in broad daylight. We've had them burn the poppy. We've got these people, and the poppy is a big thing for us, for the British Legion. These people fought for us in the war. They burn the poppy in broad daylight. We let them do it. They teach hatred on our streets.
But except, again, though, Simon, with respect, there are Muslim soldiers serving in the British Armed Forces as we speak. British Muslim soldiers, or soldiers of the Empire, as it was, then laid down their lives to fight Nazism in the Second World War.
And there, I totally agree with you. And I totally agree with the fact, I'm not talking about all Muslims, I am talking about the ban that he has done. I mean, until we actually can sort them people out and find out who are actually the bad and the good, then what can you do? What can you do? I mean, do you ban them all?
Simon, I appreciate the call. We've got to leave it there because the news is looming, but thank you very much indeed. Let's get the thoughts on this one of Laura in London. Good morning, Laura.
Yeah, hi, good morning, Paul. I agree with you about Saudi Arabia. It's just shocking, isn't it, that they're never on these lists, even though they export Wahhabi madrasas all over the world, the fundamentalist aspect of Islam that those men on 9/11 were from. But with regard this ban, I'm kind of shocked that it's okay for most people, for America and Britain, to be bombing most of the countries on this list of 7 countries. But when
we should say that started under Barack Obama.
And even Bush had a list of countries, I think, that he was banning. I mean, where were the petitions when Obama was doing it? Where were the petitions when Obama was bombing these countries? It's just pure hypocrisy. I can't make any sense of it, really.
I suppose Donald Trump made an election pledge. He's sort of sticking to it. He's not gone quite as far as he said he was going to. But I think the big question is the countries that haven't been banned are where most of the people who've murdered American citizens have come from, not from the countries he has banned. So unless he's got inside intelligence or information, it does smack to me of arrant hypocrisy.
Well, he's got business interests in some of the countries that are not listed, hasn't he? And also, for the last few years, they've been itching to start a war against Iran, although Iran hasn't been sending terrorists around the world. It's just, by the way, I'm triple nationality, and I'm one of those...
You'll never get into America. What's your heritage?
In one of the 7 banned...
okay, so what's your triple heritage then, Laura?
Australia, Britain and Iran.
So you haven't got an Iranian passport, have you?
Yeah.
So if you've got a British passport, you will be allowed into the States now, they've decided.
Yeah, I've got all 3 passports, yeah.
Okay, you've got to make your mind up one day, Laura. I'm joking, of course. Thank you very much indeed. Laura joined the conversation by saying 0344 499 1000. I'd love to hear from you on that number, please, as we go to... Let's go to Frank in Nottingham. Hello, Frank. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I'm in favor of the ban, but this thing on Saudi Arabia, a lot of you people are naive. The reason that Saudi Arabia is not on there is it's realpolitik, because it comes down to, are you going to back, in the Middle East, are you going to back Iran or are you going to back Saudi Arabia? Because those two are at each other's throats. There is no way an American administration is ever going to back Iran. The thought being that if Saudi Arabia goes down, you also lose Jordan and probably Egypt. End of the line. That's why Americans are not, So
it's about the oil then, basically. It's about the oil.
No, it's not. It's nothing about the oil. It's nothing about the oil. It's about who's going to have homogeny in the Middle East. And right now, Saudi Arabia and Iran are fighting a proxy war against each other. And there is no way, although Americans are not fond of Saudi Arabia, there is no way that they're going to back Iran.
Except that earlier on, I spoke to Kate Allen from Amnesty UK. She's one of the directors.
I heard her.
And I put it to her, actually, 16 Arab nations will not allow people in with Israeli passports, even if they're British citizens, with, say, British and Israeli passports. Where have been the demonstrations about that? People won't be carrying placards about that tonight, will they?
No, they won't. The other thing is, I get tired of hearing about how tolerant a nation, Britain is, because Britain's history... They have, in the 20th century, repeatedly, they banned people because of religion, and they banned people because of the countries they came from. So, I understand why they did it, but let's be real about it. Also, this thing about is it legal or not, at the end of the day, these judges' orders aren't going to stand. The Department of Homeland Security is ignoring them as we talk. And the Supreme Court has repeatedly ruled that the president has the power to do what he's doing. Obama had the power to do what he did. And the fact is, the power is there. Congress has plenary power, and they have given the commander-in-chief the power to make these decisions.
And can I cut in now, Frank, and say to you that the petition online now has just over 1 million signatures of British people saying that invitation to Donald Trump should be withdrawn for the state visit. What do you think about that? Should we give that man a hospitality?
I'll be honest with you, I don't care one way or another about that. If they want to ban him, that's fine. I mean, I don't want to sound rude here because I love my adopted country here, but most Americans, they're not going to give a damn whether or not you ban him or not. So, I mean, if it's going to make the British people feel better, then that's fine, ban him. Nobody in America is going to lose a day's sleep over it.
And there is that aspect of all this, which is that idea of virtue signalling, that people will, sign an online petition and harumph about it possibly, and then not bother going out on the demonstrations, not feeling strong enough to do that, and certainly not if it's a rainy night, which it promises to be. Maybe I'm being too cynical on that one, but I do think it's very easy now to click online. Like people vote for their, favourite fantasy football player. People vote for their favourite CBB, Big Brother, inmate, right. But actually they're not going to vote with their feet out on the streets the way Americans did, and it was quite massive demonstrations in parts of the country, at Dulles Airport in Washington, certainly at Houston Intercontinental, a big turnout. So what do you think's going on there in America? The country's getting even more polarised and divided?
The country is extremely polarised, and it's...
Oh, you appear to have lost... Oh, Frank, so we lost you there for a second. You were saying the country's extremely polarised?
And divided. And it has been for the last 15, 20 years.
Okay, let's move on if we may, Frank. I appreciate the call. I'm going to try and squeeze in two more. Maybe that's optimistic. Let's go to Andy in Portishead. Hello, Andy. Your thoughts, please.
And good morning. Yes, I'll be quick. First of all, can we vote for this? This is what amuses me about these sites. It goes on like Brexit and all this stuff, where they've opened up this public vote thing. Can we actually go on there and say, no, I do vote for this person to come in, and so I'm against this?
I suppose you do that by abstaining, but you can certainly vote on our Twitter poll this morning.
One way, it's not democratic, is it? It's a one-way thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
And as you just rightly pointed out, anybody could, just on the tap of a phone now, can say, "Oh, I'll vote for that." Well, they should have it also where you can vote, to allow it. It should be a two-way thing.
And you've got to leave it there, I'm afraid, but you're our last caller on that one. So